when you're ready.
Okay, so started with the self-reflection, so looking back throughout the year. So in terms of work, I've done mainly written pieces, and while there's been variation, it's been predominantly blogs, or at least blog style pieces. I've done some work in video, but this has mainly been in large groups, whereas obviously the FMP, generally speaking, is solo. And to my knowledge, I've not done any specific audio work. Also, I've done audio through video, but not specifically audio. As for skills, editing in a written sense, I feel like I've learnt more throughout the year. My research has improved, and my ability to write quickly, which I feel as though is potentially beneficial for an FMP. Adaptability is obviously a potential issue with FMP, but I think I show with the World Cup diary and how that changed several times that I'm able to adapt relatively quickly, and just generally I feel as though my writing has improved. So the actual idea itself is a series of somewhat investigative blog pieces focusing on football. It's going to be predominantly long form. I know saying focusing on football is quite vague, but that's because it is just such a large catchment. It's not necessarily focusing on one thing, but I have got the actual ideas which I will share with you later in the PowerPoint. The influences for this, there's a few here, HRTC 7s, which do videos, but very storytelling format. So it's sort of a video version of the sort of content I try to write, which I take inspiration from. The Athletic do, countless pieces like this, exposing certain things, talking about certain topics. Long and short form, it's worth pointing out. Henry Winter, again, does a lot of writing covering topics that are, perhaps a little scandalous, if they're investigative. And then The Sportsman, once again very similar, covers a lot of blog style investigative stories. So my rationale, three simple things really, I can elaborate: experience, passion and freedom. I feel as though blogs I have the most experience in, writing generally, but then also blogs within that. It's what I have a passion for. It's the reason I chose the course in the first place, because I like writing. And freedom, because I like giving an opinion and being able to write longer form, so that articles where I have to be more informative and neutral wouldn't benefit me as much, but I feel that blogs give me that freedom. My target audience. What I'm going to do to properly identify this is do research before I start writing. So perhaps with surveys or polls to really establish what my target audience is so that I can target them. But I do expect there'll be a large range of variation because, as I say, the industry of football and subtopics within that is so large. It's not going to be any one small demographic. My hypothesis for my target audience is that it's probably going to be predominantly males aged 16 up with an interest in either or both of football and off-the-field matters, potentially politics, etc. But with that in mind, I'm going to cater a certain amount of my blogs towards people that might not, generally speaking, fall into my target audience, for example, women. And in doing so, we'll have blogs focusing more on off-the-field matters while also on women's football to try and target them and bring them into the target audience. So the actual ideas for my blogs, the first one I've got is The Dark Side of Football's Academies, focusing on the negative aspects of academies, potentially a lack of education and how that's changed over time, because it is changing. And also some of the sort of harsh natures of academies. It's very cutthroat, I guess. The issues plaguing women's football, because for all of the growth we've seen, there are a lot of scandals still, and still issues prohibiting its growth, which I feel as though there's a lot to talk about there. The unhealthy relationship between football and gambling is a pretty much endless topic. You've got everything from the addiction, which is a problem, but then also dodgy shirt sponsors, Chinese betting companies exploiting laws. So there's a lot to talk about there. Mikel Arteta, apprentice turned master. More of a fun one really, because obviously I'm an Arsenal fan. And so talking about how he's gone from being Pep's assistant manager to just 3 years later potentially beating him to the Premier League title. A year on from Russia's exclusion from football, has it helped? I want to be careful with this one because I don't want to sound as though I'm defending Russia. And my opinion of it is that it has helped. But I do feel as though there's an argument to make that perhaps punishing the people of Russia isn't the right way to approach it. And given I do like to be neutral, I feel as though there's a lot to talk about and impact there. And then the last one I've got on here is Inside the Horrors of Morocco's 2030 World Cup hit. I'm not 100% certain that I'm going to do this one, but I do know there's a lot to it. And again, it's somewhat an investigative piece, so I feel as though it follows the right lines. And it also somewhat correlates back to Ukraine, so there's timing in that sense. As for equipment and resources, told by my wonderful tumbleweed, there isn't really much. All I'm going to need is a laptop, phone, internet access, and a pen and paper. I have all of those things, so there's nothing beyond what I already have that I will need to go out and get. It's fairly straightforward. And then for my research, so primary research is going to be interviews, polls and surveys. And then my secondary research is going to be watching things like documentaries and videos about the specific topics to help my understanding and knowledge of them. Twitter and social media, because you can hear about a lot of stories through there. They're not information available online like through websites. But what I'm going to do is have the secondary research aid my primary research. So if I find out about someone significant for a topic online, perhaps try and reach out to them, ask them some questions, which will then become primary research. So I feel like I can integrate the two, hopefully. And then evaluating, I'm aiming to do fortnightly evaluations to make sure that I'm constantly making sure I've not gone off track, that I'm on track, and to see if I can improve going forward. Also a bigger evaluation after each stage. For example, after my pitch I do a longer one, after my research phase I do a longer one, and production and so on. Then obviously the final evaluation will be much longer, in depth, looking at the entire project.
Great, well done. Can you bring your phone over?
Yes.
Have you got voice notes? Or
Yeah, I've got voice notes.
Video, or
Yeah.
just a record?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good presentation, well outlined. You're taking most of what we need to take into account. I want to get onto scheduling in a minute and just part of that, because it's an ambitious project, but I feel like everything you've done up till now has led us up to this. When you've given us your review there, the only bit that I have to question a little bit is your ability to write to a schedule, and draft to a schedule. You said you did, you have in some ways, but there has been times when we're waiting a little bit for a draft to come through or stuff like that.
I think it's been mainly, I don't say motivation, but I think it is motivation. I think it is motivation, because I know, from experience of some college projects, some just like passion projects. If I start writing, I could quite conceivably within one night do an entire blog piece, including editing as I go. And obviously, for the sake of the FMP, I need to do different drafts. But I do know, and I know that ultimately this project decides if I go to uni or not. So
I see there's more at stake.
Yeah, so mentally I know I will get it done at speed. I know on my plan I think I've put for 7 blogs, but I have cut it down to 6 now.
Yeah, well we'll come on to that in a sec.
Yeah,
because I just want to clarify a couple of things first.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've no doubt there's more at stake, and there's no doubt that that's going to give you that extra little bit of motivation you need. But I have to point that out because up until now, even though you've produced some quality material, it's taken a little longer than we would have wanted. I do realise that we, like you said, adaptability, you have to change things around at the last minute and we're working through things and stuff. but you do tend to write longer form, and when you do, it's more in depth, but it obviously involves a lot more research, which brings me on to the amount. But before we get to the amount, I think it's important we acknowledge how we're aiming to distribute, yeah, because this has questions around audience, but it also relates to the potential primary research you're going to do.
Oh, I completely forgot to put that on that.
Yeah, so in your mind at the moment, how are we going to present all this work?
Well, based on what I've seen other people do in previous years, I feel as though it'd be best to create a website, like a blog website, to put them on. But the emphasis wouldn't be on the website itself, because obviously designing, I think. So I will design to the best of my ability.
Well, you can keep it simple,
yeah,
but you would still have to take into account the design element,
yeah,
and
definitely.
what it looks like.
Yeah,
If Jesse was sat here now, Jesse, because we've said the same thing pretty much to everyone who's doing a blog, you would have to be able to kind of like justify why you're choosing a certain template.
yeah.
You would have to base it on other football blogs that are out there. For instance, what's his name? Write his name down. Henry Winter. He's got a blog. It look quite simple. Yeah, it's because the emphasis, as you say, is on the writing. So it's not on loads of pretty pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
Although pretty pictures are involved, you would need sourcing.
Yeah, definitely. I know I completely left that out at that point, and that was my bad, but I have already planned for the website on my the actual FMP website. I've got sections for blog research and website research.
Yeah,
and
well,
blog
good.
So that is in my plan.
Just a note on research. On Monday, we're going to do a little session in the AM on Monday to help everyone establish a research plan.
Okay. So
just be prepared to, if there's already things you've marked up for research, just be prepared that you might have to add a couple of other strings to that, right? Just describe long form, short form, and what your idea of a long form or short form is at this moment.
Well, I'd consider short form probably under 1,000, 1,500 words,
Right?
and long form probably above 2,500.
And you want to write 7 blogs.
Oh, well, no, 6.
That's pretty hardcore.
I think I can do it, genuinely.
I would say.
I think the only challenge could be with having enough accompanying research for them, but I think the actual writing wouldn't be an issue at all.
Well, I don't know how you've mapped that out on here. It looks like you're going to write one, and then research one, then write one, then research one, like that. Yeah? Is that how your process?
Yeah, I was going to research one, draft it, edit it.
I'll end up editing the final edit on it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have a lot of editing to do, but you'll copy edit it. Like you'll get rid of the mistakes and stuff like that. I wouldn't expect to see those.
Yeah.
But I can read it through if you like before you post it onto your blog site. That'll be, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'll be able to do it for everyone, but I'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you give yourself more of a realistic target? I love the subjects you're going to look at, yeah. But why don't you say, this is my ideal target, this is my next target.
It is adaptable, to be fair, because although I'm aiming for 6, and I do think I can, but obviously if I start to realise that maybe this isn't feasible, I can very easily say, well, the one I was going to do in 3 weeks' time, I'll cut that off.
Really, your plan, you should be able to work out in your plan, based on the process of researching and completing one, how long it's going to take you to do 6, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it works out as something of 1 every 3 quarters of a week.
But don't forget as well, there's other contextual research to kick things off. So there'll be, looking at other blog sites, looking at the current climate with football blogging, kind of describing who's somewhere some of the better kind of like stuff can be read, breaking down some of the platforms and what they address. You do a little profile of the athletic and the type of writing you get in there, stuff like that. When you're identifying styles and things,
Yeah.
So breaking down a few different pieces and articles to show your attention to style and what you're trying to create. All of that has to be done before you actually start writing.
Yeah.
So once you get into the flow of research for facts, then put that into an article, draft it, put it into the blog, fine. But all the groundwork beforehand. Yeah, just got to make sure that's taken care of. Yeah. Okay. So you are going to write. So the fact you've got freedom of opinion, great, but you're aware there has to be supported opinion, obviously.
Yeah,
which you've done.
and then my previous blogs that I've done, I do like to also show the other side of the argument. So although I'll give my opinion, I am open to both.
Yeah. I don't know how much effort you're going to need to put into primary research or for what reason. You should have some primary research, but I don't want you to like spend loads and loads of time on it when it's kind of like futile. You don't, like, it's not going to tell you anything.
I'm not aiming, as a primary research part of it is that I'll identify my target audience. But then also say if I am doing secondary research and if I hear about a guy, I don't know, say the thing about Russians' exclusion from football, and I hear about a Russian guy, potentially reaching out. Say my last FMP, I reached out to people to get interviews. So I could have done it without that, but it just added to it. So I'm not going to invest loads of time, but it's worth sending an email if the right opportunity comes up.
Well, I don't think you have to establish through primary research who your audience are.
No, but I said about how initially, as I say, it's quite a large scope. I mean, that's more to hit the criteria rather than I need to.
Yeah, no, I think what you should do with primary research is where and when it's needed for a particular blog.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, like use it.
That's the main thing, yeah.
So the one, for instance, you mentioned about women's football, we could quite easily help you line up a bit of primary research for that, where you're maybe talking to other young women who are trying to make it in the game or get into football journalism and stuff like that, and you can find first hand what some of the challenges are. That would be a good example of primary research, rather than, I thought you meant you were going to do primary research to establish your audience. You can pretty much establish your audience to begin with, can't you, who they are. And like you said there, it's predominantly male, but it'd be interesting to see how you cater for the emerging female reader as well, and acknowledging that you're doing that in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, that's also, I've made a point of doing topics that aren't specifically male orientated, doing pieces about women's football.
Well, for instance, if you're writing about women's football, then there's an opportunity there, a golden opportunity for you to point out how you're targeting women with that. And that's where that primary research will come in really handy. If you're writing about the dark side of football academies, unless you included the way they attract women and the way they work with women as well as men.
All aspects.
Yeah, good. So I just want you to be able to acknowledge how you are targeting that emerging readership.
The thing I've tried to do as well, I think, other than the Nicola Arteta one, which is more just because I'm an Arsenal fan, it'll be fun to write about. But I think all of them could be appealing to someone who has no interest in football. You've got the Russia-Ukraine thing, that's political.
No, I agree.
Thing, that's
I agree. I just think you should pick the first three should be the ones you really want to write above everything else, and the ones that you're going to find it easier to research above everything else. And then perhaps one of the more challenging ones as you go along, set that out quite clearly in your portfolio. I'm going to tackle these three first, and any three after that, or any one after that, or two or three is a bonus. So set your sights at 3. Don't set your sights at 6. And then it shows then, if you manage to get to 4 or 5 or 6, you're smashing the organisational element, and we can grade you accordingly. But don't set your sights too far and then find out that you weren't able to get there. Better to keep it shorter. 3 is perfectly acceptable, as long as they're not like 500 words each, of course. But 3 would be perfectly acceptable if you've been through a drafting process and a research process for each one. Alright? We'll talk more about each one as you're doing it. I think the year on about the Russian thing, has it helped the question punishing the people? Well, that's the whole point. Because by punishing the people, it puts pressure on the political system, you know what I mean? So that's.
So with that one, I do agree with the ban, because I feel like it's an interesting topic where you can question it to a degree, which right.
I think if you line them up now as the first three, what would you say?
I'd say the Dark Side of Football Academies.
Number one, yeah.
Number one. I'd say the Issues Playing Women's Football number two.
Yeah.
And probably the Ukraine or Russia one number three.
Or you don't want to do Arteta?
Well, I do, but that's more because I think it'd be fun. I think there's a lot
Yeah,
more.
but when you want to show a bit of versatility, where your voice is not just very serious, Jack
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that shows a little bit of diversity in your voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Plus, you'd be inspired to get that one done.
Yeah.
And then if your fourth one was you were going back to something a little bit more in depth and formal, then you might have the energy for the fourth one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why not do that? Why not have fun with the third one?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And plus, it will be current, relevant. Arsenal will be, the title race will be
Hopefully.
getting even closer.
Yeah.
They're pulling away a bit. It's like, seems to be, I don't know.
It won't last.
All right. But yeah, they'll be very current. And yeah, all right. And no, I think it's all these subjects, everything you want to do, top grade written all over it. But as we said, up till now, so basically with this FMP, you're going to show us a level of organisation and motivation that we've yet to see. You with me? So I'm stating that for the record because I don't want to get to the end and say, oh, I'm really sorry, Jack, but because I want you to be aware of that and how that's going to change, yeah? If it does, I will be just as happy as you are, yeah? If not happier. All right? So yeah, brilliant, well done. We'll just make sure next week we've got that research plan.
Yeah.
in place. Okay?